So that's the first aspect I might touch on. Really, like spend a good 20 minutes on today is like the intergenerational aspect of the Meals on Wheels. Another aspect I spent a lot of time on during the conference I'm going to be spending a little bit less time on today is the fact that we grow food at Santropol Roulant. So we have an urban farm, we have a peri-urban farm also, so we have two farms, which makes us a unique organization, at least in Canada. Nobody grows food downtown and outside the city in Canada. It means also that we are cooks, like you are cooks. We are social workers, like you are social workers when you work but we are also farmers. So it's something that is very specific to the work of Santropol Roulant. I don't think I'm going to be spending too much time on that, except for the recipes and touching on the veggies. So that the second aspect that I think I tend to be invited for a presentation on, it's really like we're Meals on Wheels that grow food, like grow, cook, and deliver. And the last reason I'm hoping to spend a little bit more time on today is because we are, just like all of the Meals on Wheels I've seen since I've arrived here, we have like one pretty strong foot in social services. Like we cater to people that are socially isolated, that maybe they are in a situation of food insecurity. But we also have a pretty strong foot in social innovation. So social services and social innovation. And you used the word innovative when you presented me. You used very, very. That might be one very too much. But I think there's things we do differently. Say, for example, on the food security continuum or spectrum, from providing food. Step number one is like you provide food. Step number two is you provide healthy food. Step number three is like you teach how to cook food, and then you continue on the spectrum. And I don't know if you're familiar with that. I'd be super happy to go back to that in the presentation. But at the very low top end on food security, you have food sovereignty, food justice, and I think we do it all from providing food all the way up to food justice, and that's what makes us, I think, an organization that does a little bit of food security, social services, and social change. Ça va? We're good?
Social change, yeah.
Yes, social service and social change. That's really how we get our stability. A little bit about Montreal. I don't know if you're familiar with Montreal, but Montreal is a little bit bigger than Adelaide, a little bit smaller than Perth. So it gives you an idea. It's on an island on a big river. Has anybody been to Montreal? Yeah. Wow, it's pretty cold, right? Canada, Canada, there's a little bit more inhabitants than there is in Australia, but the country is a little bit bigger. In general, it's like we're talking about big countries with a small amount of inhabitants. Yeah. So that's the thing that we have in common. Very Anglo/Anglican/Protestant culture, but that's turned in more recent years into multiculturalism.
Cultural, yeah.
Thank you. Which does have an impact on the work Meals on Wheels do. Bilingual, obviously, in Montreal. All the work we do it in French and English. Our clients are mostly allophones, and then francophones, and then Anglophones. Allophones. So people whose first language is not English or French.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So newcomers, a lot of these. And in general, when I talk to the people at the city level and they see our work and they see the Meals on Wheels and they see Santropol Roulant as a Meals on Wheels, what they tend to say is that we are a food asset for the city, and that speaks also to one thing that isn't here. We'll see whether we have time to talk about it or not. Is like conversation with the government. They would be very at different level. A little bit like Australia, Canada is a federal country, which means that we have the very local government. The city level, like for example, when I talk to the borough a lot, say for example, this space that you see here, that was 3 years ago, that picture. Now it's totally pedestrian, and we grow food in that space now. Because of conversations and negotiation with the borough. We wanted to make the space safe, we wanted to make the space inviting for people of all level of mobility, all ages. There's a playground for kids. They're like specially customed pieces of furniture for seniors, shade pots, etc. It's because of conversation with the borough level. Then we have conversation with the provincial level. about food safety, about agriculture, things like that. And then we have conversations with the federal level, which is changing bylaws and things like that. So that's for Montreal in Canada. A little bit of history about Santropol Roulant. Santropol Roulant is a very, very classic Meals on Wheels stories that you've heard 300 times before. Started 25 years ago by two young people, Keith and Chris. They were 23, 24. They were working in a restaurant. And then one day, their neighbor, she broke her hip. And there's a picture there you'll see of Montreal stairs. The way architecture is made in Montreal, I don't know if you remember, but there's a lot of outside stairs going to the second floor in a country where there's 6 months of snow, which means that accessibility is a huge deal. That person, she broke her hip, and she had to go to center just because she wouldn't be able to go to the grocery store. So she talked with the neighbors, and they were like, well, maybe we can bring you leftovers from the restaurant we work in. And she was like, so they tried that a little bit. And then 3 weeks later, that same person is like, well, listen, guys, I have a friend. She lives like 3 blocks up on the same street, and she'd be interested in also getting leftovers from your restaurant because she also has mobility issues. And this is really how the idea started. It also started because they felt like they got to meet those two women, which were of generations they're not used to hang out with much. So they were like, this is special. Like, this is providing us an opportunity to engage with seniors. So that's sort of a very, very classic Meals on Wheels.
Meals on Wheels. Would you rather not have questions, Drew? Or?
It really depends on the recording, if it makes a difference or not. What do you think?
My question was there a Meals on Wheels service in Montreal before this started? So a more traditional service, because we've been around 60 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same in Montreal. So after World War II, a lot of Meals on Wheels started on the exact same model, church basements. And so yes, there were already a lot of Meals on Wheels. But there's more, and that's something I see a lot, there's more need than there is providers in Canada. It's like really, we could have like twice as much Meals on Wheels currently than there is. When they saw the opportunity of bringing people together, they thought there was something special. The way they were like, okay, we need to start an organization. How are we going to start an organization? In '95, there was a referendum in Quebec for the independence of Quebec from Canada. And there was, at that time, a huge anxiety in the federal government that, is Quebec going to split up? And it was that close of splitting up. So the response of the federal government to that was like, okay, we need to tighten the bonds between the different provinces. And they created a program that is called Young Canada Works that helps Anglophones coming to Francophones part of Canada so they can learn the language. And you have to be under 30, etc., etc. And the two founders of the Roulant at the time, Keith and Chris, they were like, okay, there's an opportunity for us. Let's hire 20 of those young people on the rotation, 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, and they will deliver the meals. And that's how the organization started. So the organization did start with a group of young volunteers. I'm going to start, like, this is clear, was like people under 30 delivering meals to people that are over 30. I have some notes that I will be sharing with you if you're interested. Maybe I should speak now to where the Roulant is at now. The operational budget of the Roulant is $2 million. We have about 20, we're like 23 in the winter, I think. And we're about 30, 35 in the summer. Obviously, there's seasonality is a big thing when you grow your own food. We have farmers working in the summers that we don't have in the winter. And in terms of volunteers, I already mentioned it, 2,000. So we were talking with Kevin in the car how if we were not to have those 2,000 volunteers, I would need about 70 staff to be able to do the work. So that gives you an idea of, and here I'm talking about full-time staff, 3 hours per week. We have a number that I like is we have almost 500 individual donors. So that's something I will be happy to touch on if that's something you're interested in. Those are the stairs I mentioned. So that's the Montreal architecture. You probably recognize it from when you've been. That's classic Montreal scene. So you need, when you live here, you open the door and you need to go down the stairs and you're 95 years old. Not the ideal conditions. We own our building, which makes a huge difference for us. So it's the building you've seen. It has a rooftop garden, 15 tons of soil. Not a huge fan of rooftop garden, to be fully transparent with you. They're a little bit invisible, to a point where actually you saw the picture you saw. The building has changed since then. Because 2 years ago we were like, we need to be an example of what inclusion is in the city, and we have an amazing, very inspiring rooftop garden that a lot of people can have access to because they can go upstairs. So we had to do a huge fundraising campaign, and we ended up building an elevator. It's $600,000 just so that a handful of people can. But this speaks to how it is important for us to give an example of how accessibility should be at the center of all conversations. In the meantime, we started doing garden in the street, so it was less interesting to have an elevator that goes to the rooftop because, like, you have 10 times, 100 times more people going through the streets than there are people that are interested in going up to the rooftop.
It's a bit like John Howard, ex-Prime Minister.
In terms of amount of meals we do 25,000 meals per year. So it's I think it's an average number. It's not a big number like we've seen today. Meals on Wheels that deliver much more. It's about 100 meals per day.
Is it a Monday to Friday service?
It's a Monday to Saturday service, but we don't deliver on Thursday. The reason why we don't deliver on Thursday is because it is the innovation day. It's a day where all the staff gets together to create, to innovate, and to collaborate on projects. It's also the day of, so I'm going to jump to another part. It's the day where we do all our events. So we do a lot of events, fundraising events, intergenerational events. You've seen pictures of those intergenerational events where we gather the Meals on Wheels clients. We go home, pick them up, bring them together with volunteers. Volunteers love that. We do that 4, 5, 6 times a year. We do fundraising events. It's also the day of the market. So now Santropol Roulant, having a farm, do provide food to the neighborhood. So we have a few markets. One of them is near the building, so that to bring all the pieces together. One of them is in a food desert in another neighborhood. It's also the day where we have the CSA baskets. So the CSA baskets are community-supported agriculture. So that's also on the Thursday. So the Thursday is really a day where staff meets and we do collaborative leadership at the Roulant. I can touch on that if we have time a little bit later. We're at the stage now where we have extra social entrepreneurship services. We have the catering services. We do frozen meals like most of you do. We spend a lot of time doing tours, doing workshops, doing conferences, representations, and things like that, because we believe that's one of the great way we grow the food movement in Montreal. We had plenty of workshops, so urban agriculture workshops, kitchen workshops, safe space workshops. For example, we have a bike shop. We deliver meals by bike. So it's also one of the reasons I got invited often is because we do deliver meals by bike. You'll see pictures of that. So we have a bike shop. The bike shop is a community bike shop where you can go and fix your bikes for 4 days a week. We have a day that is where the workshop is booked for trans women and women. So people that are usually, workshops in general, there's a huge male presence, and we try to rebalance that in all the different aspects of our work. So the bike shop I find is a very easy story to share, because traditionally it's like really male trying to fix and give and mansplaining like everyone. So I can go to the bike shop on Saturdays, not a lot, because I identify as a male. And then I think we have a pretty strong community that is pretty broad, and I might go back to that. For example, 10,000 people, one of which is in this room, 10,000 people read our newsletter. So that speaks to outreach and things I'm going to be touching on. Urban agriculture, we started small, with one container, and then from one container to a partnership with the university. That was 12 years ago. Rooftop garden with the university, we grew pretty fast, and then we got an opportunity to have a farm. And I'm going to be quick on that. I think you might have seen pictures of the farm. We grow on 4.5 acres. It's small-scale, intensive organic farming, which means that there's a lot of crops, 130 different crops, and they're on quick, fast rotation, so the land is often used a lot, and it requires not a lot of tools. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because, when you do small-scale organic farming, it means that the assets and the capitals you bring in at the beginning of when you start that journey or that experience are pretty low in terms of investments. So it's a low investment. The land becomes something important. So land is obviously something you don't have a problem with in Australia, other than the weather obviously impacts you, access to water. Those are issues we don't have. In Montreal, I mentioned we're on an island. Access to land is really critical. There's only 4% of Montreal land that is farmable, arable. Us using the land to grow food for the city was a way to preserve the farmable land from, say, urban growth or things like that, which is a super key element for us, because when we think about food security, and I mentioned being a food asset for a city, I think we're thinking also about system change. And we're thinking it's not only feeding the people, but it's also rethinking the way we engage with our food systems in general. What kind of food do you deliver? The way we started urban agriculture may be a good example of that might speak to some of you. A lot of the food security organization in Montreal, they use food from, when you're a charity, when you're a community organization, they use food from food banks. And the food from food banks, I'm sure you have food banks here, right? Yeah. Often they're close from being past dated. There are often the veggies that have been chosen not to be grown in the, people, when you go to a shopping mall, the veggies that you will give to food banks are the ones that hasn't been bought, hasn't been chosen, probably because they're a little bit ugly. Maybe because the shape is not great, maybe because they're stained and things like that. So we realized after a little while that we were kind of tired of getting the food that people didn't want. And we had a bit of discomfort of why do people living at home they're the same people as us. They have the same nutritional needs of us, maybe higher nutritional needs if they're seniors than we have. Why would those people have less food choices or lower quality of food? So that planted a seed where we're how about if we were to grow our own food? And the fast forward is now we do grow food for 3 seasons pretty much out of the 4 seasons of the year. So we have enough food in terms of veggies and fruits for summer, fall, winter, because we do blanching and things like that. Spring, working on it. We have a mushroom labs in the basement. We grow mushrooms. Mushrooms are great for food security. Mm-hmm. In 3 weeks, you have the nutritional values of mushrooms are interesting. It grows so fast. It requires very low resources, hard to control sometimes. Small food security issues, but they can be controlled. Mushrooms, so we're trying to have ideas that allows us also to do 4 seasons growing. So that provides you an idea of why we started doing food security. And then we were what does it mean to grow food if you don't do food education in parallel? How do you change food habits of people? So there's plenty of ways of changing food habits, but in general, there's no way growing food without doing food education. So we always try to provide tours, community days at the farm, tons of workshops that not only people see and benefit from good food, but they also learn the skills on how to be inspired and how to be able to grow their own food. One other thing we realized was that changing the food systems, it's either doing a lot of advocacy, so talking a lot to the government, trying to influence them, trying to talk to our suppliers so that they buy local. Maybe they might want to buy organic, maybe, but that's a crazy job we don't have the skills for. Advocacy is a really it's a job that needs to be taught and learned. And we don't have those skills internally, but we had farmers. So we're let's develop a system that is inspiring that other people might want to reproduce. So I'm talked a lot about the farm at the conference, and I'm planning to skip I'll talk a lot about the farming at the conference, and I'm planning on skipping all that part, okay? I'm happy to go back to the farm and all the growing things a little bit later. So, because I want to touch on those things. So, I want to talk about community engagement at Santropol Roulant, because that was really how you demonstrate interest. So if there was one thing that I would want you to have conversations or things, one thing that I like the idea of sharing, because it feels a little bit different with the Roulant, is that we work crazy hard on making sure that people are engaged to the degree that they seek within the organization. The donors, we want to make sure that they're engaged to the degree that they seek. Sometimes the Meals on Wheels client, and I'm going to come back to that, and the volunteers. And I'm going to start obviously with that, because that's all of the questions are around that. So what do we mean about that? And there was your questions about the onion, like cutting the onion and things like that. What we've seen is that people who have interest in volunteering, at least at Santropol Roulant, those 2,000 people, like a vast majority of them are in period of transition in their life. Either they've lost a job, they're done with their studies, they're newly retired, they went through a breakup. So there's always a moment in their life when they go through a transition. Myself, I volunteered at the Roulant when as a newcomer to a country. A lot of newcomers. They do volunteer. It's a great way to learn skills, to integrate into a country, learn the language. Also, big deal in Montreal, learning a language. And things like that. So for us, it was like, okay, people come to volunteer for many different reasons. So we surveyed them. So we do survey the volunteers all the time. And what we get from the survey is that, yes, there are some people that come to the organization because they want to develop their kitchen skills. And to those people, we're like, okay, maybe you want to go in the kitchen and develop like how to cut an onion in 5 seconds. Or cook, Jeremy will gladly teach you how to cut an onion in 3 seconds. Some other people are like, I'm coming here to volunteer because I want to meet the woman of my life. And we're going to be like, great, fantastic. So there are different places where you can meet the woman of your life. You can maybe be in the kitchen, or doing weeding at the farm for hours. Great conversations, hours of conversations. Volunteering in the urban garden are also great places for that. So really we hear so many different stories of how people want to engage with the organization, and we solve a lot of that. Then there are some people that are coming to us, and they're like very particular. They're like, well, every year I like to volunteer with my kids on Easter Day because I want to tell them a story about what Easter means to me, etc. And we're like, great, come once a year for Easter, and maybe you will sign up wherever you want. And then some other people are like, okay, I'm here because I want to change the world. I have 6 months where I'm able to invest like a lot of time. I got that diploma, and I have those skills. I'm very good with admin. I can manage people. I can manage budget. Can I help? And we're like, sure, we'll take that. And there's a few tools that we use for that, and that's probably where I might want to. And they're touching on that. One of them is our self-managed scheduled. So we're developing. It's almost ready. I think I shared at the conference. We were almost ready with a new cell phone app that allows people to self-manage their schedule. So it's very stable on iOS, on Apple, on iOS, but it's really not stable on Android. So far we have a sign-up sheet that very similar to those I've seen this morning in the Meals on Wheels, where people, they might want to come and they will sign up. Say Monday morning in the garden, Tuesday afternoon on delivery, Thursday morning in the kitchen, and then at the market another day, and then another day they might want to volunteer in admin for us, and then another day they might volunteer in the bike shop, and the other day they might want to do beekeeping, and then another day they might want to do fruit harvesting, and we're going to be like, great. Some people are going to do that for 1 week. We're going to be great. Some people have been doing that for 5 years. We're like, great. They self-manage their schedule. So they look at the schedule, they see where there's room, they sign up themselves, and if they need to cancel, they cancel themselves. So in terms of the amount of energy we invest, it's slow. We still have 2 full-time staff working on that, but I'm paying them to work to develop the app. I'm not paying them to manage the people. So they're more working on developing the app and things like that. And we welcome them through a welcome session where everybody comes. There's like one every 2 weeks. Well, one every week, but one is in French, one is in English every week. Welcome to Montreal. After you've done the welcome session, you can volunteer in from the mushroom lab to the vermicompost if you'd like, to beekeeping, etc. Once you've done that, you can sign up everywhere you want. So the other aspect of that is that so that's about the width of volunteering, but there's something about the depth of volunteering. And that's where we have conversation with the volunteers around engagement. Some people, they want to be told what to do. Very clear instructions. And that's where we're going to send them to places where there's a staff that is being paid to supervise. And the kitchen is a great example for that. Kitchen, you're being told what to do, pretty much. And so some people feel very comfortable with that. I'm going to have 3 hours without having to make a decision. What a great thing. And some other people are going to be like, I want to make decisions. I want to manage the budget. And that someone asked the question about the collectives, and that's where the collectives kick in. So the collectives are 5 group of volunteer groups that they run their tiny program within the umbrella of the bigger organization with an extremely high level of autonomy. So what we do is that because we are, we have a building, because we have storage space, we have meeting rooms and things like that, we provide to those groups resources. So we see Santropol Roulant as a resource provider in food security initiatives. So I'm going to take, for example, the fruit harvesting project. It's called Fruits Défendus, the forbidden fruits. It is a group of 300 volunteers. They go around the city, they harvest the fruits, they bring back the fruits back to the kitchen, they turn the fruits into jam or applesauce, things like that. We have a little general store, and then they sell in our little general store the jams and things like that. With the revenues they get, they self-fund buying like new trailers, because it's still biking, that whole thing is about biking. They buy new tools, they upgrade their licenses for their databases, they do promotions, etc. So they really high level of autonomy. How do they use Santropol Roulant? We are there to provide a charity number, so if they want to apply for a grant, they can. I do workshops with them around fundraising once in a while, budget management, how to facilitate a meeting, how to do collaborative leadership. So we provide them with skills, with know-how, and then once they have that, they have an extremely high level of autonomy. Amount of time I spend every year working with those groups, 5 to 10 hours per group per year, very, very, very low. Because they actually don't need me, and they don't want me, actually. They want to be able to make their own decisions. So then they want to do their own recruitment. Do they want to ask me what kind of jam they want to do this year? No way. Do they want to ask me about what they want to put as a tagline on their label? No way. And actually, I don't want to tell them, because I want them to be able to develop their own leadership. And the reason I'm saying that, like them developing their leadership, is because when I go back to that social change food, our vision for growing food security isn't, I forgot to mention that during my presentation last week. I'm going to do a bit of a digression here. My vision for Meals on Wheels, maybe I should close the door, is for them to disappear. I'm not interested in having Meals on Wheels anymore. That's not the model that I want to develop. I want to build resilient communities that take care of each other. And to be able to build those resilient communities that take care of each other, that was a bit of a joke, but that's fine. Didn't go through. To be able to develop those resilient community, and we want to create that social net of people taking care of each other. I'm sorry, but the Meals on Wheels are not part of that vision, because you will have a neighbor taking care of you. Mm-hmm. You will have a family within your spacing, and you will have people who are passionate about growing food, and you will have people who are passionate about cooking food, and you will have people who are passionate about exchanging food. You will have people who are passionate about having intergenerational communications. Like, I'm tired of doing cooking workshops about things that our grandparents, they knew so well how to do. So we started doing intergenerational cooking skills. It's like seniors teaching how to cook to young people. It works so well. People love it. It really sells out every single time.
Collectives, is that your money though, or government grant money?
So it's mostly their money. So we give them like $500. Yes. Imagine that's tiny, and then they do their fundraising.
Because I was thinking about the accountability and reporting back.
Yeah.
If it was government money, there's always strings attached and always reporting.
So yes, that's very important that you say that. And whenever we ask them, if ever you apply for a grant, you might want to talk to us because we don't want to be two applying to the same grant, especially since they're using our charity number. Mm-hmm. But we do have, and I might touch on that, I think Friday with a conversation with some of you, we have a whole fundraising department at the Roulant where we have 4 people that are fully dedicated to fundraising. So they're connected to that. But then if I take the example of the bike shop, to be a bike shop member allows you to use the bike shop anytime you want throughout the whole year for $15. So $15 is like Canadian, it's like $20, probably $20 Australian. And so they have the membership provides a little bit of money, sorry. Also they sell parts, used parts, new parts. So overall their budget is $30,000 and they manage their expenses and their revenues. To be honest, most of the collectives, so those small initiatives, they always run a profit throughout the year and they always want to do the same thing with the profit. They want to give it to the Meals on Wheels.
So what do you get from that?
Yes. So they feel, to be between you and I, they feel very generous with that. But they sometimes forget that we're paying for the bills of the space they're using. We're paying, we're paying for the heat and things like that. So, but that's between you and I, okay? I'm going back to the digression. So, how to build like a resilient social fabric that grows food security throughout the world? Well, we believe that it's by having as many people as we can going through the model of Santropol Roulant. That's why if someone comes to the Roulant and be like, I'm going to volunteer for one day, we're going to be like, great. That's why we do all those workshops. Tours, they take so much of our time. And like, how does that provide revenues? Not really. Do the government provides grants for giving tours of a building? Not really, that doesn't exist. But we strongly believe that if someone spends like 10 minutes on a rooftop garden and because they can oversee the city, and I don't know if you remember the mountain, the Montreal, at the center of the city, and they feel inspired and they want to go back home and start cooking their food, and they share their food with their neighbors, like we've accomplished our mission. So the goal here, by having that extremely high level of flexibility, is to be able to grow the food movement. Is to be able to have as many people and investing in developing the skills of those people. Is it going to pay back for the Roulant? Sometimes yes. Sometimes people are volunteers. I wouldn't say as engaged as the people I've seen today. Like volunteers here, I've seen volunteers that are crazy engaged, like 24 hours for the last 15 years. I was like, this person is a unicorn. I felt extremely inspired. So maybe we don't have a lot of these, but a lot of the people that come through the Roulant, then they develop their skills, say, within those collectives, they develop skills in fundraising or budget or grow food farming, and then they continue outside the Roulant. And that's really a winner for us. I'm going to take the example of staff. We mentioned that they were 29 years old on average. In the last 7 years, we've had 5 staff that have started their own farms outside the Roulant. So they go through the Roulant, they learn how to farm, and then like a few years after, they start their own farm outside the Roulant. That's like such a huge victory for us. There's a Meals on Wheels that was created in France that is called Marmite Roulante. So that sounds like Popote Roulante, which is what we do, Santropol Roulant. And they just came to the Roulant. They volunteered for 3 months. They volunteered everywhere in all the departments of the organization, admin, etc. Went back to France, started the Meals on Wheels in Lyon. Works super well. They've been in business for 5 years now. That's totally a winner for us. So it's really the way we see the movement growing. So let's do time check. Time check. We're good, I think. I'm maybe gonna touch on the recruitment and retention. So where do we promote? Where do we recruit? The answer is pretty fast, pretty quick. Nowhere. We don't do any promotion. We don't do any recruitment. Nothing. What we do is like trying to do our work the best we can with activities that are pretty appealing. So doing a lot of workshops, doing a lot of tours, doing a lot of events. Our events are fun. There's always a lot of music, a lot of food. Super important. People come to our events mostly for food. They want to see us a little bit. They want to see our food a lot. So we provide food and things like that, and that gets people engaged. But what really keeps people engaged is that the amount of flexibility. If you're a student, you can come and volunteer. If you're a worker, you volunteer on Saturdays. You volunteer in the evening. There's activities from Monday 8 a.m. to Saturday 8 p.m. There's activities all the times, and you can sign up for whatever you want. So we'd rather put time and energy into providing a high quality service, a great experience. So millennial, they're all about the experience. And I've mentioned, I think during the presentation, I touched on our relationship with Airbnb. That I thought it's always stories that I'm very interested in sharing. So Airbnb, they approached us because when you go to the front page, the welcome page, I don't know if you've seen that recently. There's two things. There's housing and experiences. And the reason they do that is so that it's appealing to the millennials. And that's the experience I have with millennials. Provide them with a great experience, they're going to be like crazy engaged, and they're super smart, and their level of knowledge and their level of skills is like crazy good, as long as you provide them with an experience. And Airbnb got that, and we're trying to get that too. Mm-hmm. So Airbnb is not a company that I really like, actually. We've had very confronting conversation with that I loved. The process was fantastic, but we disagreed, so we decided not to work together. But I think they got that experience, and we're trying to get that experience too. So that's also an overview of a bit of one section of the farm. So no recruitment, and the retention comes 100% from the flexibility. We still do happy hours, how do you call it, 5 à 7 in French, which is like just events we do with volunteers. I think things you also have heard this morning about Christmas party for volunteers. So things I think you probably do pretty well. Though our events are always fun, karaoke, music, things like that, the usual things, I think, etc. I can touch on that more if you'd like. Does that answer the question on recruitment and retention? I can't remember who asked them.
Sorry,
yes.
Has that always been that way? You never had to recruit it even at the start?
No, actually not at all. I'm sorry, great question. It wasn't the way. I think one thing that changed the relationship with volunteers is starting to do urban agriculture. It brought a lot of attention to the organization. Also, you mentioned the core principle of engagement, the importance of space. Since we became the owner of our building, so you might see a picture of a building, there's murals everywhere, there's arts everywhere, and we try to value the space because we strongly believe that having a space that demonstrates a high level of diversity of colors, high diversity of shapes, and smells and things like that is what's going to appeal to a high diversity of people. Our experience, or my experience, is like when you have a space that is super clean, super white, like Scandinavian, beautiful wood, things like that, people feel not comfortable in those spaces. So there are people that kind of like, and it's really hard to get why they're not very comfortable with that. It comes back to a lot of psychological complex things. But creating a space that is vibrant, that is like multicolorful, and things like that. Yeah, so that's one of our space that's on the terrace. So that's a screen we use. That's white because we project movies on like big collectives, things like that. But that we always trying to do murals everywhere, and it gives you an idea. So I don't actually remember what that event was. It was probably super fun. Don't remember. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
With the recruitment side of it, what training do you have to do to ensure that people know what they have to do?
Great question.
Big part of what we have to do.
Great question. So actually, the funny part is that when a new staff starts, and we think of the training of the new staff, the story we share with them is we're always like, don't worry about your training, the volunteers are going to be training you. So the training, a lot of the training happened through the people that have more seniority and things like that. They've really part of the cultures and things like that. So we do those welcome sessions. They're an hour and a half, and during those sessions, we share with them the bare minimum in terms of food security and what to do with the meals when people are not home, for example. Like it's very similar to actually what you do. And once they've done that, except on the meal deliveries, there's always a staff that is on one of the shifts. So we're, being 20 or 30 staff, it means that we're still a pretty big staff for Meals on Wheels, and there's always one staff member that is with a group. So say you are at the farm with 7 volunteers, one of the 7 people is going to be a staff member. So it happens on the spot. Yeah.
And the preparing the meals, because that's a big part of what we do around the food safety preparation. We have very high regulations on us. Do you have similar?
So our regulation is much lower than yours from what I've seen this morning, honestly. Your regulations are much higher than what we have. So what we have to do is you wear a hat, you wash your hands, and you're good pretty much. And then the rest is being managed by the staff. Like taking the temperature of the meals, staff does that, not the volunteer. So I think that it applies for the kitchen. It also applies for the growing your own food. I think here is a little bit more complicated than it is for us. So I'm fully aware of that. The way we do things is, for example, if I take the example of the rooftop garden, the rooftop garden as it is now isn't allowed. But sometimes you sort of have to break the rules or break the standards to make things happen. And so we know as much as we try to inspire, we are also comfortable having hard conversations sometimes with the government and to break the rules and change the things. So that's always something I encourage. And I think, judging on, I think it was Kate closing, I really felt inspired by what she shared at the conference, where there was a lot of advocacy, I think, in her speech, and it seems to be a key part of what would help here, I think. Those are my not an expert of Australia at all, but those are my 2 cents. Maybe I'd like to talk about the engagement, the financial engagement. One thing that I've been asked to share a little bit here is the fact that we work on a sliding scale on all the different aspects of our work. So do you have a sliding scale is a system that allows you to sort of pay what you can. So it's people that can afford, they will pay more for the same quality of goods or same quality of service that people that cannot afford will pay for. So that applies to Meals on Wheels. We have a sliding scale for Meals on Wheels. That applies to our general store. That applies to our CSA baskets. So CSA baskets are extremely easy to understand. So the costs are fixed. We ask some of our CSA partners to pay a little bit more, and that allows for people to pay a little bit less by transferring this to that. Very simple. And we do that in all different aspects of our work. The example I think I gave during the conference is the gala. Gala is a fundraising event we do every year, $40,000 of revenues. In the past, we used to do a sliding scale that was encouraging people to pay between, I think it was like 50, 75, 100. So you pay what you can, one of those 3 things. And one year we were like, let's get rid of that. You actually pay exactly what you can. If you pay $5, you pay $5. And on average, we got more money than we used to have. So that model also speaks to the engagement of people that have money. People that have money, they want to change their food systems. People that have money, they want to see people well fed. They want to see like Meals on Wheels clients, like the ones I saw today. They want to see them like happy and well fed. But they don't always have the way to engage with the organization. So sliding scales, like they come and buy a jar of blueberry jam. They will pay, or honey, great example. They're ready to pay a little bit more. And it's also, from my experience, a great opportunity for them to develop their skills in terms of social services and food security. My experience is as soon as someone becomes a donor somewhere, they start learning more about the organization. So I don't know if you're donors of somewhere. So for example, I'm a monthly donor of 3-4 organizations. I read so much. Like when they send me the annual report, like I'm gonna look at all the details because I'm financially engaged. I'm developing my own skills in the field they work on, and that's the experience I've seen being being in charge of the fundraising development for Santropol Roulant. Why does it matter? Well, it does matter because the people have money. They're going to change the food systems more than people that have no money. They have more responsibility of changing the world than people that have no money. They have all the power and they have all the resources to be able to change the world. And how or why would they change the world if they don't have the skills? How would they change the world if they have no idea what food security means? How would they change the world if they have no idea what it means to live alone, with a loss of autonomy, with no access to food, with a disease, not knowing your neighbors? So we need to open a window and we need to engage them into those conversations. And it won't happen if organization like mine or doesn't do the work of like engaging them. And that's where we do sliding scale because it's very dynamic and efficient way of engaging them. One of the things also that speaks to the engagement is how people are members of Santropol Roulant. So a member is someone that can vote at the AGM. And what do you vote for? You vote for bylaw changes, probably like here. You vote for the board of directors. I don't think that's the case here. I don't think you can vote. You can.
Some do get voted on.
Some can. Okay.
And some aren't. Yeah.
And you can ask questions and things like that. Our AGM are pretty successful at the Roulant. Who are members of Santropol Roulant? Once you've received one meal during the last 12 months, you become a member. So Meals on Wheels clients are members. Once you've done 1 hour of volunteer work, you become a member. So you can vote at the election. Once you've donated $1, you become a member. And once you've worked as a staff for 1 hour, you also become a member. So all those people are members of the organization. It means that if you're a Meals on Wheels client, you're going to be able to elect the people, the board of directors that are probably going to influence somehow the success of the organization. We do accommodate vote from distance, obviously for people living with a loss of autonomy, mobility issues, and things like that. And that, again, why do we do that? It's very, very, as you might see, it's very, very democratic. We do that because we believe that that's how people are going to learn about food security and change the systems. And that's how they're going to be engaged in the food movement. And that they're going to be like, yes, there's power in food, there's power in bringing people together. You might notice that we do use trust a lot. It's really very much of a trust-based relationship that we have with I trust, actually, the deadline for the candidates for the board are tomorrow for us. And there's a bit of anxiety here of like who is going to apply and how good are going to be the candidates. But in my experience, like there's so much wisdom in the community. And there's so much wisdom in the collectivity that it's going to be all right. I trust Barry in changing the slides in the presentation, and that pays back to me because I'm fully focused. I'm with you. I sort of don't care if what happens here, and I see a smile on his face. It seems to be going pretty well. For example,
it must be Saturday.
Yeah, it is Saturday. Yeah, you're following. I appreciate that. The trust. Yes, we have in the back shop. They manage their own budget of $30,000, so they play with $30,000 of money. We trust that. In our general store, it's the cash is a self-service. So we have a box of cash where there's probably $300, and you go to the general store, you pay, and you take back your cash back. So we build that relation of trust between everyone all the time. Thefts happen, it does happen, but do we want to sacrifice trust building relationship at the costs of and then lose that crazy relationship we have with 200 volunteers, 500 donors, and all those Meals on Wheels, 230 Meals on Wheels clients? That's so much more valuable than having like surveillance cameras or things like that. So I thought that
Okay, there you go.
we don't do background police check.
One person doing 1 hour.
Yeah, they don't do police check.
Yeah, I'm going to take myself as an example. So when I arrived in Canada 15 years ago, I went to the General Center for Volunteership, being like, I'm here, I want to volunteer in my new country. And they were like, let's do a background check. And I was like, great. And they were like, where did you live for more than 6 months? And I had the privilege to have lived in 3-4 countries for more than 6 months. And they were like, okay, it's going to take six months for us to check the background everywhere. Or you need to provide, for example, I had lived in Spain. Going in Spain they only provide background check in person. So I would have to travel back to Spain to get this and come back here. I was like, there was no way I would do that. So for 3-4 years, I stopped volunteering. I didn't do any volunteering in Canada because of those background checks. So we don't do that at the Roulant, but we ask people to self-identify. So if ever you have, you have a background situation where you might have done something with a legal situation, please let us know. And I think we do that I'm happy to share the reason why we do that. I share my example of immigration. In Canada, immigration, there's 2 levels you need to go through. You need to go to immigration at the federal level, and then you need to go through an immigration process at the provincial level. And once you've done that, you're being taken care of, which means the states, the public services, they take care of immigration. Who takes care of integration or inclusion of newcomers? Well, really nobody, other than maybe the community organizations like you all, like all the Meals on Wheels. It's crazy how much charities, how much the community organizations, they do the work of doing the social inclusion of the newcomers in the country. They learn through volunteer work, they learn a language, and then they make friends, and then they develop their sense of belonging to the country through volunteering. And in terms of justice, I'm going to take the example of justice, same story. So currently, if ever you're going through, something hard, you're being judged because you've been through something difficult, because you can be in both situations actually. You've made something wrong, or you've been in a situation where something wrong has happened to you. Who takes care of that? Same thing. Like the state's public authorities, they take care of judging all those peoples. But who takes care of restorative justice? Like who takes care of during those 1 month where the people are going to be on hold because like, oh, you've been like someone did something wrong to you, the case is going to be judged. Like it's going to take us 12, 15 months, but don't worry, it's going to be judged. Who does the restorative job of making sure the person feels better? Who makes the restorative job of making sure that person is reintegrated into society when they're out of jail and things like that? Well, actually, the states, in Canada, the public government, they don't really care of that. So this is where I think the charities and the community. My dream would be again that charities don't have to do that, and I'm a strong believer in that the public services and the state should take care of that. Well, they're not going to do that. It's not going to happen. So we play a great role in doing like social inclusion of immigrants, and I think it's a very similar role into restorative justice for people that have been through something extremely tough in their life. Young volunteers, I think I've touched on that. Oh, menu design, that's going to be next, I think. People as gifts, I've touched on that. The meals, quality of the meals. So let's go into a green section of that presentation, the green segment. So the meals are the initial step, I think, is very similar to one that already exists within all the branches of Meals on Wheels Australia, is that every year we survey the Meals on Wheels clients. We ask for feedback on the recipes and things like that. In parallel, when we do that, we have a partnership with one of the university at Montreal, McGill, where we always improve and survey the nutrition of the meals based to the most recent standards. So those two things happen towards the 3rd trimester of the year, towards the 4th trimester of the year. Once we have that, this information informs the work of the cooks. They get together with the farmers and they do a crop planning for the coming 12 months. The crop planning includes all the ingredients, except proteins, that are going to be used for the Meals on Wheels for the coming 12 months. The reason why we do that is because, well, you have no other choice than doing the crop planning in the winter, because you're going to be planning for a full year and you need to start ordering the seeds and then doing the seedlings at the beginning of the year in the greenhouses, and then they're going to feed the whole year. So we actually have no other choice than doing it once a year. But also because the way we work for the meals is that we share a calendar, a beautiful calendar. I should have brought some here, that provides all the clients with the recipes of the year. So we have about 35 recipes on rotation, and each of the recipes assigned to a day, and people, they can a little bit like they do here, they can call being like, oh, today is a shrimp stir fry, like shrimp stir fry, bestseller for us. People love it. So people might be like, oh, tomorrow is the chicken cacciatore. I'm saying that because I saw that you do chicken cacciatore. Tomorrow is the chicken cacciatore. I don't really like it. I'd rather take 2 chicken shrimp fries today. Great. That increase their food autonomy. They make their own food decisions. Works very well, very, very well for us. Then if they want to go on vacation and things like that, they can do it according to the menu they've received. For us, it also allows us throughout the whole year to be able to plan for the crops we need, the crops we want to grow, and the growing season. Now thinking about that, we do put a lot of energy and work into the menus. Food needs to look extremely good. It has to be appealing. One of the main factors of food security. We do accommodate 100% of the food restrictions. So that might sound crazy, but it means that on 120 meals, we're going to have 60 meals that are going to be based on the food restrictions of people. I think here, what I've seen this morning and the whole morning is like, you are doing Meals on Wheels at a much bigger scale than we are doing. Like, our work is to build local communities that are very resilient. Our work is to build food sovereignty for a small, whereas your work is to feed people on a big scale, and you're making sure that as many people are being fed as possible, which is very different from our work. So in terms of like, we want to have a local community that is very resilient, and that includes being very flexible on a preference, like cultural preferences for the food, or obviously all the allergies and things like that. That's on the veggies and the. Is there questions on the menu design? 35. Well, I don't know what you think, but I have a pretty strong opinion that 35 recipes is pretty high. Like when the cooks, so we have like 4 kitchen co-managers that come to me every year, and they're like, we're gonna have 35 recipes on rotation. I think to myself, when I'm home, I don't know how many recipes you have on rotation. I have like 10 maybe.
Yeah.
It's always the rotation between like the quinoa and the things like that, always. And the Meals on Wheels clients, they have 35 recipes on rotation, so I feel like that's a good standard. I think.
Well, we have a 5-week rotating menu and 2 main choices a day. But some of those repeat, so like we would have a roast beef.
So that's 20 about, no.
Well, how many?
50. Wow.
Because it's 2 each day, 25 times 5.
It's not exactly 50
because some of them get repeated.
It's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
I have
Wow.
probably about 8.
Congratulations, that's fantastic. Imagine like people have the privilege to changing food every single day, something different. That's amazing.
When do they order?
So some people are on, how do you call it, rolling, if I may, and some people are episodic, so they will call. Pretty much, that's what they do. So I've seen that you have a form that you collect back when people we do spend a lot of time on the phone. Our experience is that a lot of people, they actually call a little bit for the order, but a lot for the conversation. Like you've heard that before, and we've decided that it was totally fine, and that's something we wanted to accommodate. Maybe something that is very important to me, and I'll see if I see interest on your eyes during that section of the presentation. But everything we do at Santropol Roulant, we do it open source, which means that when we develop a new tool, when we develop and the backpack, the new backpack, we share that with everyone around the world as much as possible. So our database is copyright free. It's in English, so it can be shared everywhere. But you can find it on GitHub for those of you who are familiar with that. You download it from the internet, and then you have a way to know it draws the route. So for example, something we have is that volunteers deliver with the map of the route. So that's because of a pretty strong software that does that, and it's connected to Google Maps and things like that. And also for the food restrictions, because we accommodate half of the food restrictions, and that's 60 people that are going to have something very customized. The software does most of the job. To kind of do everything, like we need to have really strong cooks that are going to pick the right recipe and pick the right sauce to make it appealing. But the example I gave, I think, at the conference was the farm hack. When one of the farmers came to me, Samuel, you saw a picture of Samuel. So those are the backpacks that we developed. We developed them with a company that does backpacks to go in the Himalayas. So we had to customize, and obviously you'll see they were very made for example, they were square. But do you have an idea of why we made it a little bit like this and not like a cube? Nope. Nope. That's good. That's good. I've never heard that. No.
I think that's what I would have said. Yeah.
Aerodynamic.
Yeah.
No.
Makes you quicker on the bike.
No, that's close.
Where you can see.
Yes. So it's for when you're biking. When you look back, if you have you had to show the angle.
David would have known that answer.
So
Yeah.
1
David's
point.
not here.
But you do.
So you can have.
I do.
So you can see the reflection of the things, etc. So they were very much custom made, and they're great for quality control of the temperature and things like that. They're fantastic, and so other organizations using skidoos actually in Canada use them now.
Are
How
they
many can you fit in?
Oh.
Sorry.
14.
14 wheels.
Yes.
Okay.
just the main, or just what we'd call the mains?
No, so you have the men that go up until here, and then you have the side dishes. We don't do soup,
Mm-hmm.
but we do. There's 6 different desserts,
Mm-hmm.
and green salad. So that goes up.
Mhm. You do salad. We
Yeah.
talked about that.
So the dessert, there's not 6 desserts on rotation. On rotation, we have about 40 desserts, but there's 6 options every day. So that's what I meant.
6 options.
Yeah.
Ah.
So the example of, back to Samuel, the example of the farm hack, because I think it speaks very well to the way we see us growing the movement, came to me, I think I showed it at the conference, so I'm going to be quick on that. Came to me one day being like, Pierre, you've approved the budget with $5,000 for a root washer. So the root washer is that big washing machine that allows you to remove the earth and the dirt from the root veggies so that they're clean and ready to be sold or ready to be used. And he was like, we put $5,000. I can't find any in Canada, so I need to go in the US. If you go in the US, you have to pay the custom duties, exchange rate, the freight for carrying it from there to here. Yeah, Canadian dollar was pretty low compared to American dollar, so altogether it would cost us 4 times the price. And I was like, $20,000, it's not a small difference. Even on a $2 million budget, like $15,000 isn't a small difference. It's a big difference. And he's a fantastic staff. And he came to me with the solution, with an idea. He was like, how about we were to buy all the materials to raw from different suppliers, and then we get together with 10, 12 other farms, and we download from the internet all the patterns and all the plans to be able to build the machines together, and we do it. And so we had a bit of a logistical issue that we solved actually extremely fast in a couple of weeks, because we found one of the university in Montreal who provided us with all the tools that we needed, and we got with 12 farms together for a whole very long weekend. Started very early on Saturday, ended up very late on Sunday. But during the whole weekend, we built 12 root washers, 1 for each of the farms. So what's the value in this?
Mm.
The value in this is like, it cost us per unit, I think, less than $4,000. So we had $5,000. So we went from 5 to 20 back to less than 4. So building it was very less expensive. I don't put in there the labor costs, but labor costs was like two of my staff. And so that was good. Then we had 12 farms that had the know-how now on how to build a very important farming tool. And then we empowered more small-scale organic farms. And see, when a little bit earlier today, I was talking about the young farmers that went through the Roulant and started their own farm afterwards. They don't necessarily have the financial capacity to have all the assets that are necessary for them to do their work. So that way of sharing the model is a good way of like slow growth. I have one of my friends who actually is a major financial partner of the Roulant, who calls that social funding. No, it doesn't call that social funding. Call that slow funding. Maybe I'm going to transition to the question soon. What's next to Santropol Roulant? No, there are changes in the demographics. We do work with young people, but I can tell that the baby boomers are coming on the volunteer market hard. It's a great opportunities for you. It's a great opportunities for us too. The way they collaborate and the way they work is a little bit different from the way young people work. Also in Montreal, we're in a situation where we have full employment. It's the employment rate is like super close to 100%, which means like when I was talking about people that are in period of transition, so we're losing two kinds of people that are in period of transition: those that are out of school, go straight to work now, and the people that have lost their work because they can find a job right away now. So those two great pools of volunteering, they're gone. That's extremely recent. It's because Montreal is doing very well financially, and there's all those corporations coming, and the economical situation is great. Well, too bad for us, sort of. It comes with pros also. When I work, like individual donors give more when the financial situation of a city is better. Engagement of corporation is something I feel extremely passionate about. That I could talk about that for hours if you'd like. Is something that improves when also a financial situation of an organization is better. So that's one of the things that are next for us. There was a question this morning about extending the services. So there is still in Montreal Meals on Wheels that are closing because of the model that actually you were right. When you were like in Canada, most of the Meals on Wheels have a similar model to here. Mm-hmm. That's right, which means a lot of people, the volunteers are aging, and when we don't have the volunteers to be able to supply the services, sometimes Meals on Wheels close. What is that telling us? It tells us that maybe we should deliver more. So it's about scaling up. And we at Santropol Roulant, I think we're great at scaling deep in everything we do. And scaling up is something we need to learn how to do, maybe. One thing that is important to me is like how much trust we have in the younger generations and how we see the younger generations as the solution of the future. And by that I mean like making healthy food decisions around like what kind of food they buy, what kind of food they grow, how they engage with their food systems, how they take care of their communities. And more we're working with schools and kids. So we do, for example, one of our garden is called the Pizza Garden, where we gather with kids in schools at the beginning of the year, and we draft together a pizza menu, and they decide like what they want if they want peppers, tomatoes, zucchini, eggplants on their pizza, and they design the whole thing, and then they design together the garden, and then they see the food growing, and then we cook the veggies together, we bake the pizza together, and we eat the pizza together. So we go through the foods, and like maybe we're going to recycle, or we can compost some of the food wastes. So we do the full loop. This is extremely draining on resources, like this, but like social change won't happen without the kids. And then the kids, they change the habits, the food habits of their parents. So that also, to be fully transparent, we do that a little bit because I think the government, at least in Canada, has understood that if we want to change the food system, it goes through kids. So they work a lot with schools around things like that. So it comes also with money. So we have that vision. The government has that vision, and there's a potential money bridge between the two. So let's do that. And I think the last thing we try to do is a little bit of sharing the model that we do, because that's a model we believe in very much, and that's probably why I'm actually here. I'm actually here this week. Yeah, and I think that's it for now.